What's happening, guys and girls? Acrinator here, and welcome to another episode of World of Warcraft Dungeon Overview. This episode will be starting off the first of the instances in the Ulduar hub, specifically going through the Halls of Stone. I'll be going through it with my hunter you see here, so with that being said, let's dive straight into it. In the very northernmost reaches of the Storm Peaks lies a massive Titan complex from which they first shaped the world. Their army, workshops, and many more resources were all located in the Grand Halls of Ulduar. Built atop the prison of the nefarious old god Yogg-Saron, this was the Titans' stronghold on Azeroth. After millennia of shaping the world as they saw fit, the Titans left the job of looking after Azeroth to their appointed keepers. With their masters gone off to new tasks, the Titan keepers continued their missions of making sure the world soul of Azeroth had the best chance at a healthy maturing. Despite the early infestation of old gods that plagued the planet, the forces of the Makers managed to hold a tight grasp onto their relative peace. Of course, primordial races began popping into existence and warring with each other, but their quarrels were of no concern to the Keepers. So long as their actions did not put Azeroth in harm's way, they were free to live and die as they chose. Over time, the prime designate of the Keepers, Loken, fell into darkness and began turning on his brothers and sisters. No longer is he following the quest laid out for him by his creators, but rather he is bolstering his army in order to wipe out the mortal races of Azeroth. Of course, we cannot allow this to happen, so it's up to us, with the aid of Bran Bronzebeard and his crew, to put a stop to this crazed Keeper's plans. But before we can face down Loken himself, we first have to shut down his ability to create more Titan constructs. It wouldn't be too good if we were forced to fight a literal infinite army of iron warriors, and as such, the Halls of Stone is our first target to siege. The Halls of Stone is a level 70 to 79 dungeon with a level 80 heroic mode located in the Ulduar complex in the northernmost tip of the Storm Peaks. While you need flying to get up to the raid entrance, luckily both dungeon entrances only require ground mounts, as long as you have the flight point to the isle that Ulduar sits atop. Assuming you are starting your journey from said flight point, you'll just need to head to the leftmost portal. There aren't any enemies outside these instances, so don't worry about that. Just make sure you're walking up to the right portal by checking the area immediately in front of the portal. They should share the same name as their respective dungeons, so it's pretty hard to mix them up if you're paying attention. Of course, if Loken is trying to create an army of iron and stone, he needs to mine it from somewhere. Luckily, the Halls of Stone hold within them such a quarry, making it all the easier for him. In order to guard such a crucial point in his plan, the Titan Keeper selected the crystalline giant Crystallis to oversee the mines. Pretty simple when you boil it down. It's a giant rock monster that isn't going to be too happy to see us, but that's never stopped us before. The main thing to note for this fight is that you should stay as spread out as you can from the rest of the group. This might be a bit difficult for meleeers, but casters have no excuses for not heeding this warning. This is because Crystallis will occasionally cast Ground Slam, which throws all players back and slows their movement speed gradually over time. Eventually, you'll all turn to stone for a few seconds before shattering out of your bonds. The shattering effect damages you based on your proximity to others, so again, spread out. The last thing is that the casters will want to stay further back as well to avoid a standard stomping ability that the boss has. This one doesn't stun you, it's just good to leave your healer with less work to do at the end of the day. The Maiden of Grief is a Titan construct that has been forced to ensure that no usurpers from within make it very far in their plans to sabotage Loken. While she doesn't take any joy in fighting her former companions, the Maiden fulfills her duties as she is told. Her grief is so great, by the weight of the burden she must bear, that even her sorrow has been forged into a weapon to be used against her opponents. The Maiden of Grief really only has 3 things to take note of. The first is that she'll cast Storm of Grief, which places a black pool on the ground that'll deal shadow damage to anyone in it. The next thing is called Shock of Sorrow, where the boss incapacitates all players for 10 seconds or until they take damage. Depending on how confident you are of your healer, you may be able to just stand in the aforementioned pool of shadow to remove this stun immediately, but I wouldn't recommend trying this unless you're pretty geared up. The last ability is called Parting Sorrow, where a random player is hit by a bolt that steals some of your mana and damages you for the amount of mana stolen. This isn't horrible to deal with, just take note if you start running low while casting spells. In order to safeguard the secrets of the Titan constructs, various computer systems were created. They ensure that any foolish or desperate enough to access the records without the proper permissions are met with a gruesome end. Unfortunately, we've brought along one of the most curious dwarves on the planet, and there's no way we'd be able to stop Bran from poking his nose where it doesn't belong. Buckle up, because we've got security measures to deal with. In order to start this fight scenario, you'll need to talk to Bran Bronzebeard. He can be found right next to his plane on a terrace right outside of where the fighting will take place. Just click on the dialog box and he'll run off towards to where he needs to be. Once at the edge of the boss room, talk to Bran again to kick things off. The main focus of the fight will be protecting Bran from small waves of trash mobs constantly trickling into the room. None of them really do anything different from the trash mobs you've faced in the random corridors of the dungeon up to this point, so just make sure none of them attack Bran. Side note, you can actually heal Bran, so make sure he's topped off as well as everyone else in your party. The biggest worry for you during this encounter will be the giant heads on the three sides of the room. They all have different abilities that have the potential to wipe your group if you're not paying attention. Well, at least two of them do. The head on the left side of the room when you're facing in attacks players with small lasers at random. These don't do enough damage to really worry about, they only add a slight bit of extra damage into the mix. The right head activates next, and it charges up and fires a small orb of shadow energy that moves towards a random player. This goes pretty slow, so it should be easy to avoid. If it does hit you, it'll damage you, increase future damage you take for a while, and greatly decrease your movement speed. The last head facing towards the entrance will fire a continuous laser at a random player's location. Luckily, this doesn't follow you around, so just make sure you're constantly moving around and this won't hurt too badly. This entire fight is basically meant to see if you can survive for a certain amount of time, so it's based more on healing and damage mitigation than anything else. Sort of the opposite of a damage check when you think about it. Janir is an Iron Vrykul who willingly went along with Loken's plan to betray the other Titan Keepers. With his ingenuity, this loyal construct has made a machine that will forge more soldiers out of not only stone, but iron as well. He's been waiting for the opportunity to see his creation come to life, and now's the perfect time to, with the Prime Designate being crazy and all. It doesn't matter for who or what purpose these warriors are created, Janir just wants to see his dreams become a reality. I'd almost sympathize with the guy, if he wasn't trying to create an unstoppable army of evil, that is. To get to the last boss's room, just go up to the door and you should see Bran stealth in front of it. Just talk to him to open it up and be on your way. The name of this game is Ad Management, and it's honestly pretty simple. Just take out the ads as they spawn and you'll be good to go. Let them build up too much and you'll be overwhelmed faster than you can say oops. Janir will place a static charge onto a random player, where they will deal damage to all allies and enemies around them, so be sure to give some girth to your party members. Likewise, casters will want to stand further back because the boss will cast a debuff on all players in 10 yards, increasing the damage you take for a short time. Lastly, the boss will go into a frenzy at 20% health, meaning that you should wait to pop all your cooldowns until he's at about 25 to 30% health, then just burst him down in one go. That way you can avoid as much panic as possible. Well, I hope you all enjoyed this episode, and if you did, feel free to give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more like it, maybe even subscribe. Links to my social media and whatnot are in the description below. And as for the comment question, why do you think the Titans made their records firewall so breakable? Seriously, all you have to do is best some of their constructs and you get access to their records? Seems kinda easy to me. Do you think maybe they wanted to give any strong and willing enough the opportunity to learn about the universe beyond Azeroth? Kinda makes you think. Anyways, that's all the time I've got for today, so until next time, don't die.